hodling is great. We all love it. But if we don't support Bitcoin initiatives around the world, it's going to be hard. We have to support each other. We have to support creators that are adding value to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is fundamentally revolutionary technology that actually isn't revolutionary at all, because it brings us back to nature. It brings us back to hard money, which is something that's existed for a long time. Fundraising just doesn't work. In 85% of the world, nobody can use it. And then secondly, there's a problem with censorship.
I saw on the website that you has Geyser has over 30 Bitcoins already raised, and over 1,000 projects. And the most interesting part for me is that 55,000 different contributors are included in that. Before we get into interesting projects and all the interesting stuff with Geyser, for people that don't know it, what is it and why did you start at that project?
Absolutely. So what is Geyser? Geyser is what we call a creator platform. It's a platform for creators to launch their ideas, get support from the community, whether it's through donations, whether it's through selling rewards, perks, and then more basically tools for fundraising. And it all started with the idea of donations, right? And donations, something that even just by itself works very, very poorly in the fiat system. To give you an example, if you want to use GoFundMe or Kickstarter or Indiegogo, these platforms work in only 30 countries if you want to create a project. So if you're in Brazil, if you're in Brazil, in Africa, and in other countries in Asia, you cannot use these tools. And you can't use them because they rely on PayPal and Stripe and other sort of cumbersome and unfair regulations that make it hard for people around the world to make money online. So Geyser and Bitcoin solves this. Geyser really just uses Bitcoin and Lightning, and we try to make it as easy as possible for people to launch their ideas and receive donations. So that's how you have around 50% of all projects on Geyser are based in these emerging markets in other countries that don't have access to this tool. Now, ever since that, we then launched other features like rewards. You can sell, tickets, books. You can sell gifts, raffles, like all sorts of different things, so that you can give something back to those people who are donating. And then we also have more features like that coming up as well, that are really about helping creators online to monetize and empowering them.
How does this work with monetizing creators? Like just that the guys is the middleman between the creators and the audience, or is there some Patreon subscriptions going on?
Yeah, so it's mainly right now really creating a platform where their project can live. So we do have a lot of podcasters, for example, that have their project on Geyser, and they can sometimes can sell like sponsorships on Geyser. It's really we are the interface that doesn't touch the money. So we don't custody any funds. The funds go straight through us and into the hands of the creators themselves. So we're creating this new model for creators where we just provide the easy user experience, the interface, but just to help the creator showcase their idea, kind of promote themselves, and then sell their stuff.
It's interesting because I think one major catalyst where also GoFundMe was really in the news was the Canadian trucker incident.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Good point. So that's the other thing. The first point is fundraising just doesn't work in these, in 85% of the world, nobody can use it. And then secondly, there's a problem with censorship. Every crowdfunding platform, it acts a bit like a bank. They use these third-party accounts that can allow people to hold their funds in their apps in these companies, and we completely deviate from that because the funds go straight through us. We don't custody, we don't control the funds at any point. So there is no way that we could ever freeze funds. There's no way that we could ever freeze funds. So absolutely, Bitcoin fixes this as well. The funds go straight to the creators, and we cannot get in the way. And also importantly, GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Patreon sometimes takes months, if not years, sometimes to receive the money. the money gets stuck, and it takes a long time for the creators to actually get paid. I think Gumroad is another one. It takes 2 to 3 weeks. Guys are instant. You get the money right away. So
It's
really,
it's
yeah.
funny how a decentralized network can be more effective and faster than a
Mm.
centralized database entry that has basically like what do they have to do? Like it's just a centralized database entry. How can this take so long? And decentralized, there's proof of work. There's all those different attributes that work together. Theoretically, everybody would say like, yeah, of course, centralized exchanges are way more effective. But when you look at the reality, Bitcoin is actually more effective in handling those situations. It's fascinating to see.
Yeah, a very good point. I mean, Bitcoin can be quite slow, right? But that's why we're Lightning native. So probably all transactions, let's say, yeah, 95% of all transactions happen eventually through Lightning. And even if you fund on chain, we swap it over to Lightning. And so, yeah, speed of light.
It's amazing. This Canadian trucker, did this happen before you get started, or is this something where you already started, or was this the trigger point where you get started?
Good question. We actually were triggered before the trucker convoy to start on the summer of 2021. Me and Stelios, my co-founder, we then launched a pilot project with the platform with one project, and then you could request to get access to the entire platform. To You could request to launch your own project, and that we launched the week after the trucker thing
Mm.
happened. So we had a lot of people saying, "Hey, can we launch a trucker project on your platform?" And we were like, we just launched, and it felt a bit like we might kick the hornet's nest kind of episode here. So we we decided to not get involved because it had been way too early. We had just launched this thing, and well, we couldn't. We were technically not ready for it, but that helped us to understand how important this is as a tool, and how we can, bring this tool to all sorts of use cases, to people all around the world that don't have this tool, but also for all these other use cases where people want to just have certain beliefs, have certain values, have certain objectives, and they can't raise funds for them. I do have many friends who have sent $10 to the truckers via GoFundMe. Their bank accounts are frozen, um,
Mm.
and it's unbelievable how. And then I tell them about Geyser, and they say, "Oh my God, that's gonna change everything." And just the idea, like the fear they were feeling, the fear of losing their funds or their entire bank accounts being blocked, and the fact that even their names were leaked. Did you know this? The Canadian government leaked the names and last names of all the people who funded towards those campaigns. They doxed them.
By like intentionally, and how did they do
And
that? I did not know about that.
I don't know the intent. I suspect that they would. They released it. Basically, as is to say, these people are bad people. Uh, how bizarre is that?
Like even for me, the whole Canadian trucker is like even if you completely stand on the other side of what they protested, you should even then you should completely support them to at least have the right to support whoever they want. Like it's only a matter of time till your opinion stands on the other side of the government. It's like wait long enough, and all of a sudden you are the victim of stuff like that, and then you are really glad that something like Geyser, something like Bitcoin as a base layer and Geyser as
Yeah,
an application on top of that, is there and can support you.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And just to piggyback on that idea, so Geyser, so yeah, the government came over and said take 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 the project down or freeze the funds. We couldn't freeze the funds because we don't custody them. In terms of taking the project down, that may be a place where, as a platform, we have to comply with regulations, and so if a particular jurisdiction were to say that, we might have to comply. That said, every project on Geyser is also on Nostra. And so what that means is the project itself can never be deplatformed. The project may be deplatformed, just not deplatformed, if you know what I mean. The project itself exists on Nostra across relays. It doesn't exist just on Geyser. So you could continue to support a project in the future, even if it's not through Geyser.
How is the interface between Geyser and Nostra? Like, how does they interact with each other?
Yeah, so at Geyser, all the Geyser projects are sitting on the Geyser relay, the Nostra relay. And so the Geyser interface showcases all the data that just from the Geyser relay, right? So the difference between a typical Nostra client is that a Nostra client will be fetching data from, I don't know, 20 relays. Well, the Geyser interface is looking just at the Geyser relay.
Mm.
And this may not be the case. In the future, we may decide to expand. But the reason for that is because because all relays are about profiles. Instead, Geyser is concerned about projects. Geyser is concerned about campaigns. But so down the line, if there's another crowdfunding platform that arises that also deals with projects, well, then we can start pulling data from them as well. And in any case, you can go on any Nostra client and already see the Geyser projects used by fetching Geyser relay data. So, yeah.
That's really interesting, because even if like there's a project that's controversial, that some jurisdiction says we don't want that on Geyser, they force you to take it down. You obviously have to comply, otherwise the whole project, whole Geyser probably will go down. So you will take it down. And the interesting thing now, no funds are lost to this point, because the funds are not with you; they are already with the ones who received it, and they even have the possibility through the Nostra protocol to let it live on. And even if it gets down on Geyser, maybe there's another a similar site that picks it up, or there's some other thing that picks it up. And the most important thing, I think, is the funds cannot get frozen, and you also don't know who funded it. Like, it's just a Lightning address, so you don't know the persons. It's like, not, you don't have the possibility to get our clear names. You maybe can get Bitcoin or Lightning addresses from it, right?
Yeah, so the funders, you mean the funders, right?
Yeah.
The funders can fund anonymously, or they can fund using by logging in. You're right. If they fund via Lightning address, that's a good question. I don't think we could ever know the Lightning address of the sender. No, I don't think it's possible. Yeah, so you can fund on Lightning anonymously. On chain, you can also fund anonymously, pseudonymously. So yeah, that's absolutely supported.
That's really cool that we are building now all those decentralized tools that basically, like in the most critical, like in the most offensive way, it undermines the government control. It undermines the power of the government. And this is something that I think will be an interesting journey to be on in the next like couple 5, 10, 20 years. And I talked with a lot of different Bitcoiners on the podcast, how Bitcoin and applications on top of Bitcoin will change our society, how we can live together. Because in the end of the day, Bitcoin is just money. But the interesting part with money is that you can build on top of it when it's programmable with Bitcoin, and it has an interface, and you can put applications on top of it. And all of a sudden, all those centralized things, we GoFundMe and the fiat system and banks, they can just be like, oh, government knocks on the door, this account please freeze, this we want those lists. And now there are services and applications where you don't even have the possibility to do that. And only if you don't have the possibility to don't do that, then only you can actually provide that decentralized way of thinking. It's really, really cool. For to get a feeling what's the kind of projects on Geyser and what's going on, can you maybe share like what are the most successful projects, the projects that tend to do really good on Geyser, or the projects that are like, this is where people want to fund the projects?
Yeah, good question. So we have most projects on Geyser are still very much Bitcoin related. I think 95% of projects have to do with Bitcoin in some form or fashion. In terms of the successful projects, we have three broad categories of projects. There is education, right? Projects that are trying to support Bitcoin education through, for example, uh, I don't know, doing courses like Mi Primer Bitcoin, right? Being very, very popular example of that. Secondly, we have projects that are about Bitcoin culture, kind of creative people. And then so you have a ton of documentaries that are raising funds. There's a really cool new one called No More Inflation, by Shooter, and he's raised now $6,000 by selling tickets, by selling sponsorships, and things like that. You also have games, right? That are also related to education, but like Block Hunters has sold around $7,000 worth of board games that he's hasn't created yet. He's kind of he's basically working on them, and people are pre-buying it. And then this game really allows you to have fun, educate people, uh, have a good time with friends and family and orange pill people, and uh, and then a third category is Bitcoin communities, and this is where you have uh, Bitcoin citadels or Bitcoin circular economies. One really big one was, let's see here, one big one might be, yeah, it's really hard to point one. There's so many. There's so many. It might be a meetup. It might be like a workshop. Some people even try to start up conferences to see if there's interest in that. But usually smaller scale meetups, workshop where people can say like pitch in some sats to buy a venue or things like that. And so Bitcoin communities, Bitcoin culture, and Bitcoin education are the key the big ones. You also then have humanitarian projects, um, like we had the earthquake in Turkey earlier this year that raised quite a bit. You then have a project in Gaza that is supporting victims of victims of the bombings. Um, you also just have all sorts of things, like you have a big one also called Defend the Proof of Work, and it's basically supporting legal experts in pushing back against proof of work mining ban in Europe. And they raise, yeah, almost $1,000. Obviously, much more is needed. So if you care about Bitcoin, if you want Bitcoin to succeed, looking at Geyser and seeing what projects there are is a very, very good way of supporting the Bitcoin ecosystem. Hodling is great. We all love it. But if we don't support Bitcoin initiatives around the world, it's going to be hard. We have to support each other. We have to support creators that are adding value to Bitcoin. And the best way to do that is by departing with some of our Bitcoin, showcasing their support. And like I said, even every sat counts. Even 21 sats uh, can help a creator feel like, oh well, so what I'm doing is is valuable. People recognizing my worth, right? So um, Geyser just makes it super easy for people to launch their projects, and makes it super easy for people to support them, um, and to see the project come to life, grow, and see that history of the history of transactions, and the history of proof of work that the project has put in, um, that the creator has put into the project. So yeah, it's really go on Geyser, help support projects, help launch your ideas.
It's an amazing initiative. What I'm thinking right now is, can Geyser, because most Bitcoin companies out there that are bigger, like Relay and stuff like that, they are usually venture capital backed. Not all of them. Some are then venture capital backed. Some are like organically grown. It depends on the business model and stuff like that. Can Geyser in the future also? I mean, I know venture capital is different from like crowdfunding, but can Geyser and crowdfunding be even helpful to raise capital for a company in the future?
Absolutely. So we already are seeing a lot of open source projects on Geyser that are launching their ideas as a way to showcase if there is interest in it, right? And then a few of these projects actually, for example, Orange Pill app. Do you know about Orange Pill app?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for example, they launched their project on Geyser as a way of seeing and testing if there's interest in their application. And so they pre-sold like 50 subscriptions to the app before the app was launched on Geyser. And so they used Geyser as a way to see if there was interest in their product. They did that, they launched the app, then they raised funds from investors. Right. So absolutely. There are a lot of even open source projects that are launching, getting donations, and then they go to, say, HRF, they go to some of the big grant holders, and then they say, look, I have this great product. The community loves it. Look at that. People are even donating on Geyser to keep it alive. So absolutely, Geyser is really a way to connect a project to its community of followers, and it also just surfacing the crowd, surfacing through social logins, through recognition, through contributions, showcasing who is funding, kind of bringing that social layer together with a monetary layer.
When we zoom out, like, I don't know, 50 years or like 100 years, uh, can this be launching a completely new kind of economy where every project that is out there started on like something on a peer-to-peer network and is started on like a crowdfunding platform like Geyser and is basically decentralizing the I think a lot about, for example, when we take podcasting and social media in general, in the earlier days where there was no social media, there was just television networks. You have to go like climb a career ladder to get like the position in the to be a host in some TV show. Now everybody can just host a TV show on YouTube, on all the X on platforms, and then additionally to that, the platforms also pay them, like X and YouTube. They pay. Then you have also value for value. This podcast has some supporters on Fountain. This is also funding the podcast itself, can fund other projects. And then you also have for projects, but also for creators, Geyser. I'm just wondering what you think will happen like in the next, when we really have a broad sense of like 50 years out. I mean, it's always hard to look out that far, but do you have any idea like how this can evolve?
Yeah, man, it's such a good question. I love the question. Not an easy question. I love it. Uh, yeah, so 50, 100 years, it's gonna be unimaginable. I think any attempt to just think something crazy and just say it's gonna be much crazier than that. That's how crazy it's gonna be. My feeling. What if you could, what if you could IPO, right? Like, what if a creator could IPO, right? Sell equity, and every money, every sat that you receive, a percentage of which it goes to the owners of your stock, right? So um, right, Robin, right?
Mhm.
You have your podcast, you end up, 50 years having 100,000 followers, daily viewers, and some people say purchase like 10% of your entire uh, dividends, sorry, 10% of your equity for your project, and then every zap that you get, everything you receive and you sell will go to the 10% of people that the 10% of your stockholders. And I think something like that could help bootstrap, help you like monetize early on, and the people that believe in your idea could help you make it, and not just through donations, but by getting something back in return for your effort and for their vision. They also had to see the vision and buy into it. So I think donations are very powerful, value for value. But I think if I think forward, there will be things built on top. The first thing on top of donations is just giving something back, like getting something back, like for example, getting a sponsorship, right, or getting a ticket before the goods are even there, but pre-buying, pre-ordering something. Then it's buying. When if a product is ready, you can buy it already. But then there is maybe lending, and then there is equity, and now equity is a tool that is super complicated. It's a bit like what you said with television, right? To have a TV show, you have to be it's exclusive. You have to go to these channels and centralized channels. And now anyone can be a podcaster, anyone can be a YouTuber, and have more audience than mainstream media. So imagine the same thing applied to equity, where equity right now is like equity is we are not we're taught to think, oh, equity is bad and IPOs are bad and VCs are bad. The reality is the equity is just a financial tool that's been captured by the state as well. It has to go through regulations. It has to go through the SEC, who gets to define, right, and also sets threshold. So it's really really difficult to buy equity into a company peer to peer if it's less than $25,000. You have to go through a syndicate if you want to buy $1,000 worth of equity. And good luck trying to get equity by spending half a cent or $1. There's no way you could do that. But I think with technology being what it is, a democratizing tool that just is deflationary and reduces prices for everything, I suspect that's going to be the next big thing. I think the next big thing will be just like the fact that equity gets the cost of issuing, the cost of buying, the cost of redeeming dividends for equity is just going to go down like crazy. The problem is, shitcoins try to do that by issuing tokens, the issuance of tokens. The funny thing, though, is that they issued tokens and then they called them utility for like voting rights. And what did they call them as well? They called them, well, I forget what the exact terminology they used, but in any case, most tokens to remain compliant were just voting rights. They didn't have any dividend issuing capacities. But that's the point of it. That's the beauty of it, is that if you have an idea, you can then share the rewards back with the holders. And so basically, shitcoins did equity done wrong because they had to still work with the equity system as it is. But I do think that by doing equity in a more decentralized way, we can take even equity out of the hands of governments. There's some really interesting projects out there that try to do that on Nostra, like Nostra Rocket, if you're interested in looking more into that. G Sovereignty is doing some pretty awesome things in there. We're looking. Hopefully, Geyser may be a place where creators could do that in the future in a way done well. And again, we want to remain neutral and just a platform that makes it easy for you to do that. But eventually, creators like yourself should be able to use all financial tools at their disposal. If they have an idea and people can want to believe and have a part of that idea, then why not?
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. I mean, it would be really awesome. Like just me, like when we take now my example of my podcast, I just started out in December, so it's really early on, and there's still like I think each episode gets around 1,000 listeners. So just imagining having those listeners, giving them a way to contribute to the podcast, supporting the show, and in addition to that, getting a small share in the podcast, where when the podcast is getting big and the media is getting big, they're getting rewarded for being an early supporter. We all have those people like, oh, I subscribed to Mr. Beast when he was under 10,000 followers. Yeah, but what do you get from that? Nothing.
You get, yeah.
And that would be, I think, an interesting way. But I think it's also an dangerous route where there can be like a lot of shitcoining, because then all of a sudden creators make like tokens and then they sell it, and then they like do that.
That's the problem, right? That's the problem. But I do wonder if there's ways to do it without the equity, without the token, right? I mean, a token essentially, yeah, it's a good question. There may be ways to, equity may be required, right? Because if I own a percentage of Robin, your show, and then after a bit, I'm like, okay, I'm done with it. I want to probably be able to sell it in some form, or maybe not. Maybe the beauty of it is that it remains tokenless, and if I purchased it, then it burns. Yeah, I don't know, but I agree with you. There's definitely that's the danger, right? As that it becomes like a gambling mania of sorts. But I think the problem, though, is that the problem of tokens and shitcoins is that they were divorced from the dividends. The only way to make money from a shitcoin is by selling it again, because I think that the shitcoin will never give you equity, never give you dividends, because otherwise it's a security, and so most tokens don't do that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, some try, and then they get shut down. So yeah, I think by making dividends the heart of an idea, which is you get a percentage of all the flows that go into your project for a certain time. You make it about not the ownership of not the value of the token. It's more about the dividends that come back to you for a certain time period.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting field. I think a field that is not really developed till now, like applications like Geyser and other platforms. I think still those are really early, and we just see a small window what can happen, what are the possibilities on that, and also for creators, the monetization for projects, the monetization for, oh, we want to defend, like even political, like when we say we want to have a defense against European banning, the European Union banning stuff. This is like a political force that is built on a decentralized network, fighting against something. The possibilities are now like small building, and I think we're just seeing small steps, and we cannot even imagine how big this will be in like 10 years. It's an exciting time to be alive and see this evolution evolving.
So
We talked a little bit about shitcoining, and I'm always interested in the origin story of someone's Bitcoin. Like, how did they get to Bitcoin, especially if people like yourself are building applications on top of Bitcoin, like their confidence level went beyond just holding it. They want to be fully in the ecosystem. And like, where's this motivation coming from? Where was your Bitcoin origin story? Probably there's also a shitcoin phase, or could you could you move around that? As a few lucky ones are moving around.
I'm not one of the lucky ones. I definitely have my shitcoin phase. But no, for me, I I studied anthropology and economics, which is quite unusual.
What
By having a double sorry,
what's anthropology?
anthropology is a bit like sociology. It's a bit like sociology, but more interested in, say, like indigenous societies and say like archaeology as well. So anthropology is fascinating study, and it's all about kind of culture, understanding culture, and why culture differs across countries. Um, the problem with anthropology, though, is there's many problems with it, but one of them is that it's always very subjective. It's especially this kind of modern wave of anthropology is all like relativist, right? So there's everything is relative. You can't say anything is better than another thing, um, and so and their understanding of money is basically zero. Like money is just you know uh, not really considered as um as something worth studying or worth analyzing deeply. Um, Although it is very powerful, it's like a fundamental thing in like humanity and the rise of civilization and evolution and human flourishing. But there are some anthropologists that really kind of really interested me, like Lewis Henry Morgan, as a very old anthropologist that was anthropologists still make fun of today, but it was really powerful in this idea that trying to understand humanity from an objective standpoint. So they kind of coined objectivism because it's not relative; it's objective, seeing humanity kind of flourishing through time through the use of technology. And so technology was, you know, so when it comes to then economics had all sorts of problems. But I hated anthropology. I hated economics more than anthropology because economics, in fact, the two of them said always opposite things. But economics says everything is great, but when in reality, like the world around us doesn't follow the principles that are taught in economic school at all. Um, Again, in economics, people talk about Austrian economics being a bad idea. Um, Anthropologists didn't like Austrian economists for some weird reason. Um, while actually, in reality, there are a lot of similarities. But in any case, I went through after university. I ended up working for a nonprofit in Nepal, and I ended up trying to basically working in this field and in remote areas of the country in Nepal after the earthquake to understand like what were the problems of these people. And what we realized is that there were a lot of people that had no toilets in these rural areas, had barely paved roads, but guess what they had? They had their smartphones. They had their smartphones that they used to communicate with their friends and family on the other side of the world. And they would work, say, in Dubai or in Sri Lanka or whatever, doing all sorts of tough jobs. But they would call back, they would send money back. And I was blown away at just how powerful technology was in lifting up these people that are living with very little, and yet technology was the tool that they were able to kind of rise and be empowered through. So I was just blown away about, and that really made me reconsider the role of technology as a fantastic tool for emancipating humanity as a whole, and especially those at the bottom. And then after that, I discovered Bitcoin. I discovered Bitcoin mainly on Twitter, and I understood that this thing was not going away. That this is a money that is borderless, permissionless, and eventually also that was that had the store of value property is being taken out of money. So Bitcoin helped me reevaluate a lot of what I had learned in school. Uh, Economics, a lot of that had to go down the trash. Anthropology, a lot of it had to go down the trash. But anthropology helped me enter the mindset of a Bitcoiner, because I was like, okay, look, these Bitcoiners are either crazy or they discovered something really, really powerful, really, really important. And so then I ended up doing some research into Bitcoiners. I did a survey, did some interviews with some people that are in the Bitcoin community to try to understand what's the belief system of the Bitcoiner crowd. And with that, I understood that there was something here. The Bitcoin standard helped us cement it. Bitcoin is fundamentally revolutionary technology that actually isn't revolutionary at all, because it brings us back to nature. It brings us back to hard money, which is something that's existed for a long time. And then with that, I did look into Ethereum and to other cryptos. And obviously you buy Bitcoin and you have to buy them in these shitcoin casinos, so you end up getting confused. Um, but but yeah, eventually I snapped out of that. I realized, what am I doing? This makes no sense. This has no utility. And so yeah, I ended up just focusing more on Bitcoin. I ended up working for a company that then pivoted to Ethereum. And so I was able to kind of, for a year and a half, kind of dive in the world of startups and see what was going on in the Ethereum ecosystem. And I wanted to try to be open-minded, but the reality is it was just as bad as I had imagined it would be. Ethereum doesn't, has insane exorbitant fees. It didn't work very well. Obviously, I got to learn more about how it's just not decentralized at all. Cloud servers, nodes that nobody knows how much Ethereum there really is. And also the secondary layers that were just horrible. Like the secondary layers on top of Ethereum that don't speak to each other, that have their own tokens, that there are their own blockchains, made no sense whatsoever. And meanwhile, there was Lightning. I was running my node. I was like, this is insane. How is nobody building on this? How is all this shit being built on these shit coins and no one's building on Lightning? And so I realized that something needed to be done about that. I realized that there were so many Bitcoiners that were coming up with cool ideas and cool things, and people were sending fucking QR codes on Twitter, and it really really bothered me. It just didn't seem like a good user experience for me to fund other projects. And so so I talked to Stadios, a friend of mine that I've been speaking to. We met on Twitter, another Bitcoiner, and together we decided to put together a small proof of concept to see if there might be interest. And a few months, 4 months, we were able to put something out there. And this guy in Nigeria called Apata, who wanted to do a workshop for his community to talk to them about Bitcoin. And in just 2 weeks, he received a few $1,000s from 100 different people from all around the world. And we realized that there was something here, that that using the existing tools, there's just no solution to it. And so Geyser really was born like that.
It's an amazing story for Geyser. Also, it shows, I think the demand is just coming and it's just piling up slowly, and it will come even more. I think this S-curve adoption for all those for Bitcoin itself, but also all the applications on top of Bitcoin is just really coming to build up. I have one interesting question that might be interesting also for the listeners, but is a selfish question to ask for me. Do you have an advice for me or advice for how I can have projects, or what would be the best way for me to have projects on Geyser to monetize my podcast, to have projects on for the podcast on there, or in general for podcasts?
Yeah, so I absolutely happy to give advice. So I think there are some projects on Geyser that you can learn from. I think the best way to learn is from example. And there are some really cool projects on Geyser, like, for example, the Progressive Bitcoiner. And he's now been on Geyser since June 2023. So it's been, like around 8 months. And he's raised $1,600. So it's not, it's not revolutionary, but it can be a good addition to what you receive from, say, Fountain. Geyser is free to use if you connect your node, or if you connect your Lightning. You can also connect your Lightning address, whether it's on Blink, Wallet Satoshi, Stripe, or Bitnob or Albi or whatever. So that way you don't have to manage your liquidity. It's a lot easier. In that case, we take a small percent fee. It's around 2% at the moment. But yeah, Geyser ends up being a really good complement, I think, to say Fountain's streams. I think actually Citadel Dispatch is also on Geyser. He raised quite a bit as well, and I think we've seen that in term we could actually if you connect your node, the same node that is using podcasting podcast key send transactions, you can actually visualize on Geyser the percentage of transactions that are coming through Fountain versus through Geyser, through podcasting in general versus Geyser. And Geyser is usually around 60% of donations because on podcasting you're like tapping Zap, and you often have to use your own wallet inside the podcasting system. While in Geyser, you can send funds from on-chain. You can send funds from your any wallet, on Lightning. So you don't have to send funds to Geyser to fund, and as a result, you end up funding a lot more. So I would just recommend put yourself out there, try it out, learn through it. Let us know what you think. Let us know how we can improve because we're here with you guys to learn and improve. And also just don't be shy to ask for donations, right? The biggest problem is that people don't know and don't ask for support. And now you can also sell rewards on Geyser, so you can sell sponsorships. So it's super easy just to say, hey, I have this podcast, check out the sponsorship package, and I'll be happy to feature you. The sponsor gets featured there on your page as well, so they get recognized through your page. There's many ways you can sell merch, you can share updates, and so it's really becomes like a place where your project can come alive, and you can get people to easily support you, and also recognize contributors. Because the problem is that we realize is that creator contributors, funders want to be recognized. If they're giving you $100, it would be nice to have for them. It would be nice for them to have their social profile showcased, so that they can feel like, I've contributed to this worthy Bitcoin cause. I get social recognition for it. You can also sell Nostra badges on Geyser. You can sell all sorts of things. So really, it's about putting yourself out there, trying it out. Don't be shy about asking, and yeah, just think about Geyser being a tool for you as a creator to help you monetize and recognize your community.
That's an amazing advice, and I think the podcast will come out in 3-4 weeks, and I might just start with that podcast, a small project, and let's see how it works out. And monetization for me is a part where I'm like, first it was not at all a focus of mine. I just like created for like years, like 1.5 years now, and I had my fiat job, but since January. I starting to see monetization from the platforms, from Fountain, but the main part was like that a sponsor that is now sponsoring the podcast with 21 Bitcoin is supporting me. So now I'm in the transition phase of actually doing that full time, and I will
Amazing.
do it
Congrats.
from next week onwards full time. Monetization is now something that allows me to bring even more quality content for my community. And I think I changed my view on monetization in the last few months, because I see it's like it's good for the listeners and for the creators itself to have even better projects coming out from that. So with that, we're coming slowly to the end, and we're having an interesting end routine. And this one is actually interesting, where we have a question from the previous guest going to the next guest. And the previous guest was not a full Bitcoiner. Like he is a full Bitcoiner. He understands everything, but he's not his brand and his recognition is not focused on Bitcoin. He just happens to be also a Bitcoiner what he does. And he had a question about ordinals. I will read the whole question, how he asked it, because it's I think the longest question I ever had. But then we can go over it, what you think about that topic. Given that the Bitcoin blockchain is fundamentally a message sending device that was first used for exchanging money allowances between accounts, isn't it a natural and legitimate extension of its functionality to allow it to carry ordinals, which are also messages across senders and receivers? So basically,
So
about ordinals,
my answer to that would be that he sort of answered it himself, because he said that he says Bitcoin is a protocol for sending messages, but then he says that it's messages about money. So to my mind, Bitcoin as a protocol is a monetary network for sharing financial information and not arbitrary information of any kind. That's sort of my perspective. You don't see people sending photos across the SEPA network. You don't see people sending tweets across the what was before protocol, which is MasterCard or Visa. It was financial information, right? And so back in the day, something like ordinals would have, and actually were, eliminated as a form, because it would have been considered spam, as in outside the remit of the monetary messages, the monetary information that needs to be transferred. So that's why I'm in the camp that I don't know. I think they were able to pass this through, but my feeling is it's spam. In that Bitcoin is, yeah, sure, it's a marketplace for anything, but it could be an attack vector for Bitcoin. It could lead Bitcoin to fail. I'm not sure the solution is a hard fork. I hope we don't get there, but I do think we have to learn about what is Bitcoin, and in my mind, it's financial messages. There's so many other tools. You could use Liquid. Uh, you could use RGB, which is better, can scale arbitrary information, but it just feels like graffitis. And some people love graffitis. Some graffitis are awesome, but it just feels like spam to me.
Yeah, it's I very much agree with that, and it's interesting because I think it's actually an attack on Bitcoin. It could be considered an attack on Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, it's just one of these things that test the Bitcoin network, as we had already so many times with the block size
Absolutely, yeah.
chaos, with everything. And
Agreed.
if Bitcoin cannot survive that in whatever form it can survive that, then it was never that what we thought it is. So I'm really confident that this is just another attack on Bitcoin. I think the biggest one was 2017 with the block size wars, and this one is as I, from my small subjective opinion, I think a smaller one. But yeah, it could be interesting what road we are going down there. Like there's a lot of different opinions. The Bitcoin crowd is getting bigger and bigger, and with the crowd and community getting bigger, of course, also the opinions are getting more diverse. And yeah, I think basically a good thing in the end of the day, but also can lead to some problems. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
So thank you, Mick, for being on. It was a pleasure to having you. For people that want to get to know you better, for people that want to get in touch with you, where can they find you the best way?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. You can find me at MetaMick14. On Telegram, the same. You can follow Geyser at Geyser Fund on Twitter, or just go to geyser.fund to either launch your project, to fund other projects, and just play a part in Bitcoin. As we say with at Geyser all the time, is that everyone's a creator. Everyone's a creator. Everyone has an awesome idea. Just Geyser is, is the easiest place where you can just start your project, and where your project can live, and hopefully will be there to see the project grow and grow and grow. So don't be scared. Put your projects out there. Get it out there. You can contribute, because anyone can contribute to Bitcoin. So whether it's through education, books, comics, memes, etc., etc.
Thank you, MetaMick, for being on.
Thanks so much, Robin. Good to be here.